Atlantic Ocean, outside the Pillars of Hercules. He described it in great detail. It had giant palaces and gold-encrusted decorations and springs that ran hot and cold, running water, and it grew all kinds of stuff.
But Atlantis met with a swift and violent demise.
He actually described an island continent of Atlantis. And that continent exploded volcanically. And then he described it having this catastrophe, natural catastrophe of volcanic explosions and sinking into the sea in a very short period of time.
The mystery of where the lost city of Atlantis lies has inspired historians and fortune seekers alike. In the 1930s, the famous clairvoyant Edgar Cayce believed he had solved the mystery when he was contacted by the soul of an Atlantean while in a trance.
Edgar Cayce was a prophet, a visionary, who lost his voice when he was a teenager and couldn't talk anymore. And so he communicated by telling people in this hoarse whisper what he had dreamt. And he had all these dreams, and what started on the basis of his dreams was this enormous society that still exists.
Cayce was convinced that the lost civilization lay under the sea, where the island of Bimini now stands, sitting in the eye of the Bermuda Triangle.
Cayce said that Atlantis existed as a civilization 50,000 years ago, and it was going to rise up from the sea in 1968 in the Bahamas.
Bill Donato dives in the waters around Bimini in search of artifacts from Atlantis.
Most people don't realize that the Bahamas, for example, were a very large landmass of thousands of square miles before the end of the Pleistocene. Around 9,600. In fact, the islands out there would be 7 miles from shore as opposed to what they are now. And in the Bahamas, Bimini would literally have been a mountain. It would be the highest point.
If there was indeed an advanced civilization that sank into the sea, then its technology would also have been lost to the watery depths. According to Cayce and his followers, powerful Atlantean crystals that generate light-emitting energy may still remain buried.
According to Cayce, the great crystal itself, the way he describes it, suggested it was something that was cylindrical. He'd found a quartz source that was growing near something that was naturally radioactive.
Could it be that the power these crystals emit is so strong that it could cause ships and planes to disappear? As far-fetched as this may seem, reports of magnetic anomalies in the Bermuda Triangle have been recorded, lending another thread of possibility to those who believe.
Well, I believe that if there was an Atlantis, and they were advanced, that they probably did have some way to harness this energy.
But not everyone is convinced.
I don't know how somebody would think that Atlantis would be causing this. I don't know if they're like death rays from Atlantis or something. So I have never been able to figure out why anybody would think that Atlantis has anything to do with disappearing ships and airplanes.
To prove that Atlantis really does exist at this site, Edgar Cayce's followers point to a long, smooth configuration of rocks that appear to have been fitted together by human hands. A 200-foot-long structure known to some as the Bimini Wall and others as the Bimini Road.
The Bimini Wall is, as originally discovered, was a series of what looked like large paving stones underwater. And scuba divers found these things and could not explain them in geological terms. And so they therefore made the assumption that this must be somehow related to some underwater city, perhaps Atlantis.
In order to investigate the theory that a magnetic force emanating from Atlantis could cause planes and ships to disappear in the triangle, one has first to determine whether the story of Atlantis is real in the first place. At the United States Geological Survey in St. Petersburg, Florida, geologist Eugene Shin has spent more than 30 years studying the formations near Bimini.
Back in the mid-70s, I got involved in looking at the famous road or wall, depending on what you call it, off of Bimini. Many people thought that was something to do with Atlantis. I would admit that when you see it underwater, it's very impressive and has a man-made look to it.
Shin bored down into the structure and took core samples from several parts of the wall. Back at his lab, he analyzed the rocks to determine their age, makeup, and origin.
We sliced these cores so that we could see if the bedding was dipping that way or this way or so on. Then we x-rayed them to make the bedding show up better. What we did not find is any evidence of anything made by humans.
But those who believe in the lost city of Atlantis are undeterred by the findings.
I do have belief in the facts that Atlantis is a historical fact. Although we don't have artifacts, I believe eventually it will be proven historically that Atlantis did exist. But so far as being the principal civilization that's called Atlantis, I don't believe that the Bahamas was that place.
If Atlantis does not exist under Bimini, then the theory of energy crystals disrupting ships and planes in the triangle may be nothing more than fantasy.
The Bermuda Triangle and Atlantis have really nothing in common except that they're both mythological, made-up stories.